I kind of begrudgingly respect just the dedication to not getting better at what you do for a living. Just coast through life.
It probably shouldn't even happen.
If you got it, you got to flaunt it, Acid.
You know what? I got a lot of stuff that I don't want to flaunt, and so I just keep it to myself.
Jeremy is really big into the used mattresses. I think that's an excellent deal.
He has a used mattress store on the side.
I'm not going to pull the pants down without the pants down cue.
And we found out that Anthony's friends are all 13-year-old boys. Nice.
Clay, how you doing?
Doing a little more poorly after that terrible introduction. I was just fine, to be honest with you.
Hello, sci-fi gangsters. This is the show where we talk about science fiction, video games, and comic books, but really it's just an excuse for me to catch up with my friends and to meet interesting people. I'm Anthony Dinar, and person who loves talking fan theories. No matter how much that term annoys Jeremy when I said, we're going to discuss fan theories, and he sends me an angry text, a furious text saying, that's actually it's not being used correctly. I get it, Jeremy. I understand. We're just using that as a way to organize the topic today, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about our favorite Star Trek fan theories, whether they were written on Reddit or wherever we found these fan theories. We'll each pick two and we'll discuss why it's our favorite fan theories. Whatever you want to call it, Jeremy. You want to call it fan theories? You want to call it fan fiction? You want to call it hot takes? Whatever you want to call it, that's what we'll be discussing here today. But before we get started, I do want to introduce the panelists. Are we calling everybody panelists? Is that what we're doing? Is that the terminology that we're using here? It's actually been a while since I've seen a lot of you because many of us have been very busy. I did a whole episode by myself last week, and it went fine. There's no video version of it because I don't know how to do that, but the audio version is on wherever you get your podcast. We discussed teaching comic book studies classes. That's what we talked about. It's a bunch of nerds talking about that. But today, we're talking about our favorite fan theories. Okay. So let's go ahead and get to my co-host, Jeremy. Jeremy, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm less than a week away from being at DragonCon won't have started, but I will be there preparing for DragonCon, so I'm good.
Yeah, so obviously we're all very excited about DragonCon. I am as well. I spent all summer creating my cosplay, and I'm looking forward to showing it, displaying it multiple days. So I'm definitely looking forward to that as well.
I still have not gotten what I need for my cosplay, so it'll be a last minute thing. But mine's also super low effort.
All right. Well, definitely sounds good. The last part of my costume, is it near me? The last part of my costume is over there. It is a, here, I'll show you. So I have a head that I ordered, and I'm going to put a Spider-Man mask over the head and carry it like I just killed Spider-Man. Right, that's part of the cosplay. That's what we're doing here. So that should be a whole lot of fun. Scaring kids is what I am about. And yes, is Jeremy's camera angle annoying me a little bit? Yes, a little bit, because it looks like he's looking away from me. He's intentionally has his back to me. That's what it feels like with that particular camera angle. It feels like it's personal, but it's okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the producer of the show, Acid. Acid, how you doing?
I have never been so tired in all my life. This job has drained me physically, emotionally. I've had more stress in the last 4 weeks than I've had over the last 38 years of my life. So it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah,
but things are starting to calm down a little bit, so that's good.
I know you've been struggling with your new job. I know you've been sort of frustrated with having to deal with particular issues with your new job, but hopefully you'll get better.
Let's get a little better. The first week of school is done. Second week of school is done. And they have rolled out a new app which has caused nothing but headaches.
Mm.
It's one of those apps where you can track your child's school bus and, see it, before it gets to the stop, in the morning, and then drop off as well. And of course, low bidding like we do. It doesn't work on the first day. So who gets blamed? The sky gets blamed. So I have nothing to do with it. I'm still learning it. And in fact, they were supposed to wait until about October to roll this thing out. But one of the schools, I won't mention which one, for obvious reasons, but one of the schools decided to go ahead and just blast all that information out to every parent they could. And of course, there are parents that work at other schools. And of course, I got that. Let's blast that out our school too. So needless to say, all the schools ended up blasting it out, 2 months early, and we weren't ready for it. And now it's one massive headache, and we're dealing with it. And I've already yelled at the people who are responsible for it. And I've said words over this last few weeks that I'll never say. And I've said them to people. I've said them to teachers. I've said them to principals. And I still have a job. So what does that tell you?
It sounds like you're having a rough situation. I'm sorry, Acid. Hopefully you'll be. Hopefully
I was kind of hoping they'd be like, Adam, you're fired. But they haven't done it yet. So I'm like, I guess they're just that desperate.
Well, I'll say that my son's school bus has been running smoothly. He gets to school, no problem. So you're doing a fantastic job.
You're the only one.
Fantastic job. Let this parent say that you're doing a great job with the school bus.
Asa, do you wish more people would homeschool their kids now?
Yes. Homeschool them all. I don't want to see one kid in a public school ever
Okay,
again.
sure, right.
I would homeschool my kids. I don't care if they're, no, actually, I'll take that back. You can go to public school. It's fine. I don't want to be responsible for getting you there. You just find your own way there. I don't care how you get there.
All right. Well, very good. Let's go ahead and move on to Will. Will, one of our favorite guests on the show. Will, how you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you guys for having me back. It has been a little while.
Celebrating Halloween a little early, are we?
This guy's always there. I actually got him from work, and he's just a regular fixture on the microphone here. I can't not have Mr. Green Skeleton Man. And yeah, so we're actually, speaking of Halloween, we're sort of transitioning into Halloween mode, early Halloween mode. You see the stores opening. But our son right now is into dinosaurs to the extreme. And he's very smart about dinosaurs. He can talk. He's 4, and he can talk about all the different kinds: Brachiosaurus, the weird ones that you don't run about when you're a kid, like Majungasaurus and whatnot. And he'll tell you what period they're from, and he remembers if it's Cretaceous or Jurassic or whatever. And he is obsessed with the Jurassic Park movies, because obviously when you think about dinosaurs and pop culture, that's like your first place. He's 4, so you want to be a little bit careful with those because of the people being eaten and so on that goes on in those movies. But he's ravenous with it, and he always sets his dinosaurs up and plays with them and bashes them together when he gets home from school, takes them to the bath, bashes them together in the bath, and then gets up the next morning and wants to play with them again before he goes to school, and then comes back, and it's just a cycle that repeats. Yeah. He's got me in like this place where every time I go out now and walk the dog, I'm like half expecting a T-Rex to come stomping out of the trees behind me, which has not happened yet. I'm sure you guys will be glad to know, but it's a very Jurassic situation over here at the Moon House of late.
Well, sounds fantastic. My son's really into Pokemon cards. Out of nowhere, within the past couple of months, he got really into Pokemon cards, trading Pokemon cards. That was his big thing over the summer, because we had him in summer camps. And all the kids had their binders of Pokemon cards, and he got really into trading with other kids. So he constantly wanted to get more Pokemon cards to trade. So he's been very excited about that. All right. And of course, In sci-fi gangsters tradition, Will is appearing to us and refuses to be all the way in frame. Just refuses to have his entire face in frame. That's why we love Will.
Yeah, it's a dramatic angle. It's like an artistic thing. It's a French thing.
Very good. Sounds good. All right, so let's go ahead and catch up real quick. It has been a while since I've been able to talk to many of you, especially Acid. I know things have been pretty hectic with you with the new school year beginning here. I'll go ahead and begin. It's been sort of a hectic couple of weeks for me as well, although certainly not as stressful as Acid's situation. I have not said mean things to coworkers, but I actually have a journal article that's scheduled to be published. I have to submit by Tuesday, and I'm working very hard, grinding through this thing to kind of work to get it to be decent. I got some feedback from my advisor, and I have some work to do. Obviously, I have to work on citations and everything as well, which is incredibly annoying. So obviously stressed out about that. I will say one of the highlights, though, is that all of my classes are fantastic, which is not always the case. Every semester, I might have one or two classes that are just not really into how I like to teach, right? They're just not they're very quiet or whatever. But every one of my classes are fantastic. So I'm definitely excited about that. But we'll go ahead and move on to Jeremy. What's new?
So I did some traveling for work, but I did get to watch a little TV. So I watched the first few episodes of Sandman, which I liked. They're sticking to the core concepts of the story. They're changing some, like the timeline of some things, but I'll give it a shot. I think they'll do a good job with it. I also watched the first episode of She-Hulk, which is it was okay. Yeah.
Is it worth a watch? Or should I just skip it?
The first episode, there's not a whole lot there. I was like a little disappointed because it was one of the shows I was looking forward to. Yeah, we'll see. It's a little cringy in a couple spots, but yeah. The first episode.
The CGI isn't the greatest, I will say.
Really?
I do like the actress who plays She-Hulk. I think she's fantastic. I think she has a lot of charisma. I think she brings a lot of fun to the character. So I did enjoy that element of it.
Yeah, I liked her in Orphan Black. There's a couple of the writing spots that didn't really hit in this episode, but we'll see what happens.
Trying to think about what you think didn't hit. The one time
production sucks. Is that what you're telling me? Like production is not.
I think it just has a lot to do with the CGI. It's the CGI. It's hard to capture a realistic looking She-Hulk in a lot of ways. Probably more so than a Hulk.
Okay.
What is fundamentally different about women, Anthony? That it's what are you trying to say?
No, I think it's harder to capture the She-Hulk character than it would be the normal Hulk character.
So I actually didn't notice anything wrong with the CGI.
Okay.
I didn't. I mean, I don't expect $250 million cinematic quality on a show, but there wasn't any like glaring issues that I noticed.
All right, well, fair enough. Excellent. So Jeremy seems to be enjoying some television. He's looking forward to Dragon Con as well. So that'd be a whole lot of fun. All right, so Acid, what's new with you? I know you've already sort of expressed your frustrations.
I won't bring work into it. How about that? We've already
talked
we've already talked about work. Let's talk about other stuff. So I'm making it through because this is what I do. So I go to work, and when I get home, of course I eat dinner. But then after dinner, I get 20 minutes where I can actually have some free time. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, which shockingly surprised me. I mean, I know it's still in early access and everything, but I've kind of gotten into it a little bit. I started it a couple of times. I started it with a bard, which was a huge mistake. Yeah. Like I tried. I was like, man, I'm horrible at this with this bard. So I ended up restarting it with a barbarian, trifling, the
Tiefling.
tiefling. Thank you. Yes. Um, with that, so it's interesting so far, and
Now, is Baldur's Gate, is it like the original Baldur's Gate where you can create a whole squad, or is it more like Diablo where you just create one character?
right now, well, you create one character and then you create a character that you would be attracted to, I guess. Like, so maybe there's a love element into it later on down the line. I haven't gotten that far if that's the case. So you create your male or female persona, and then you can create another male or female like partner or however that works out. But yeah, so you create those, and then afterwards you can join with other people. So like you and Jeremy and Will all created your own character. We could all party up together and then play it with our own characters, group of 4. But just single player storyline, you meet people along the way and they join your party.
Okay.
And everything. So, but it plays. I've never played a Baldur's Gate before. This is my first Baldur's Gate experience. And it plays a lot like it's on the D&D rules. So you're rolling for your stuff whenever stuff comes up, like your lock picking and conversational pieces and stuff. So you do the little dice roll and it's really cool. Everything's put together real well. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. And
is that just for PC?
I guess I don't know if it's on console or not.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna come out on console. I think it's been
in early
beta
access
for quite a while.
Yeah, but there was on a Steam sale about a month ago. I call it a sale. They're selling it right now for $60, but I think I got it for like a little under 50 when I bought it. But yeah, I've been enjoying it so far. Probably keep going with it.
Well, fantastic, excellent. We miss you on Halo. That's all I have to say. We miss you on Halo. I still been grinding through that.
I don't even have it installed anymore. Oh, I did get this brand new Viking mug. Check this out.
Oh,
very, very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
All right, Will, what you got besides dinosaur situations?
Well, it's as I'm sure you know, when the topic is dinosaurs, that's the topic. But now we outside of that, I watched Prey. And that was a few weeks back when it came out on Hulu, and was really, I enjoyed it a lot. I'm a huge Predator fan. I probably watch Predator more than any other movie I've ever seen. Not because it's my favorite, but just because Predator used to be on just all the time. When I was a kid, it would be on after like every third Braves game on TBS, or it would be on TNT, or it would be on FX, or it would be on AMC. It just bounced around all the cable channels, and then and then it would move to the HBO or Cinemax type places too, so you could just constantly be watching it. And it's just a very enjoyable movie. It's a very good version of what it's supposed to be, which is a very military kind of horror film. And I've watched every sequel, and all of them are worse, and most of them are pretty bad. Like the previous movie, The Predator, is just awful. It was just an unspeakably terrible movie. And so there was a sort of like franchise loyalty, I guess, with it. I was intrigued when they announced this. I know that the director had planned to literally get all the way into the theater before you knew what you were watching, which is a really great idea in theory, but there's no way that 20th Century Fox / Disney now would allow that to happen. They're not going to allow a franchise character to not be marketed that way. You're giving up money doing that, but that was the plan. And I did think about how cool it would be to go see what, like in this case, would be what you think might be a like Native American survival story, and then about 20 minutes into the movie you hear the Predator and you're like, oh, that's what this is. It's like, it ambushes you the whole way. But with that said, I mean, I really enjoyed it. It did go back to basics. It introduced an idea that has been bouncing around in Predator lore for a while, that they've been coming to Earth for a long time. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but there's a very big reveal in that regard towards the end of the film. And it's just a really cool idea for a movie. I do wonder now, considering what I thought was an extreme amount of like sort of pop culture relevance there for about a week after it came out on Hulu, where it was much more of a buzzy thing than anything that was in theaters. Taking advantage of what's been a bit of a lean period at the theater. I think originally Black Adam was supposed to have come out late in July. When they moved that, the late July and August just were really empty when it came to big movie releases. So Prey really took advantage of that. And I think it's been so successful that you might see now like a similar idea in other franchises. I really wouldn't be surprised if you see like Vikings take on another kind of alien creature or something kind of movies coming up. Because I mean, even just with the Predator, you could do several different versions of this. You could do Predators fighting in the Crusades, Predators at a World War II battle, or Predator, and there actually is stuff in the various comics and other things that sort of lean towards that. That could pretty quickly water this idea down. And knowing how movies tend to go, it probably will be what happens. But I was very impressed with it. It's not perfect. There's some things I kind of wish they would have done differently early in the movie, but it's a hell of a lot better than every Predator movie made since at least the second one. And if you can, in your mind, this is going to be a theme when we talk about Star Trek later, if you can eliminate the Predator, the movie from 2018, out of the first movie, Predator 2 with Danny Glover, Predators with Adrian Brody, and this movie, you've got a pretty solid 4 movies. They're all pretty watchable. I didn't love Predators, but it's okay. It has one really great scene where the Yakuza hitman guy fights the Predator silently in the grass field. That's really cool. But it's a worthy movie. And those 4 make a much stronger horror franchise, honestly, than most horror franchises when they get this far in. So yeah, that's a stump for Prey. I thought it was definitely worth seeing if you have Hulu, or you just want to get a quick like trial of it and watch Prey and then cancel it. I thought that's something that's worth the time.
Well, fantastic. Excellent. I have one question for you. We don't want to spoil anything, but I want to hear your opinion on this. When the line appears in the movie, when you hear the line,
yeah,
did you like it or was it cringy to you? Go.
It worked for me. Okay. Maybe I'm a little more forgiving on Predator stuff because, I mean, it's a silly idea for a movie to start with. I think literally they came up with it was, what if Rocky fought an alien, was a running joke in Hollywood at the time, because there had already been so many Rocky films. And then the guys who wrote the original script just took that idea and ran with it and just subbed out Stallone for Schwarzenegger. So
to be clear, I'm talking about the quote. When the quote appears.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because there's two big things in it that really tie back in with the previous films. And
is it one of Arnold's lines?
It's an Arnold. It's an Arnold quote.
It's probably the most famous line in the film, I would say.
I mean, get to the chopper.
No. It's most famous serious line in the film. It's not stick around or whatever like that. They should have worked all of them in.
It's like not you're one ugly.
Yeah, they were
actually not that one either.
Oh, it's
everything he says in that movie is golden. So.
Oh, it is. The dialogue in the first Predator is wonderful. There's so much ominous dialogue in that movie. Something out there waiting for us, and it ain't no man, or what, you just get all these phrases, or everything that Mac says, the guy who just sort of goes crazy at the end of the movie and chases the Predator into the woods. There's all the characters have like at least 3 lines that are just supposed to be as spooky and dramatic as possible, and it really works. And I think that in Prey kind of does get back to that a little bit, and definitely they straight up borrow from the first movie one of the big lines, and one of the other characters, not the main character, says it. And then there's an even bigger, I'll admit, I kind of thought it was coming, but when the thing happens at the end, Anthony, that references another movie in the franchise, I was pretty pumped. It's very fan service, and a lot of times I can be pretty out on just fan servicey movies, speaking of Jurassic Park sequels. But when the object in question is revealed late in the film, I was like, yes, hit me with it. So maybe your mileage, I could understand, could vary on it. but it worked for me, and I think I'm curious what they're going to do now, because they sort of indirectly set up a direct sequel, in a very sort of discreet way. Or they could just sort of go with the anthology thing and just jump forward further in time and do like the World War II thing, like I was saying, or something in some other time period. But yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here. I'm just curious who comes back from this
one set in?
1721,
yeah,
I think is right.
Because there are French settlers that make an appearance.
Yeah, the French voyageurs. There's a little bit of, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to start, because there were people, like actual American Indians who worked, heavily on this film, and that's great. So they're gonna know better than me. I'm not gonna be this white dude that gets on here and starts telling them stuff. I was a little. I do think they rolled some stuff together, because like the characters are Comanche in this movie, and it does seem further north than you think of Comanche having lived, because it's much more. They filmed in Alberta, outside of Calgary, so it looks very Canadian. And the presence of the French voyageurs is also an odd thing for Comanche. Comanche you would normally think about with Spaniards, because they would have come up out of Mexico. But the French did get around back in those days. They really did. So it's not that it couldn't happen. I think if you're going to be like super picky historically about it, you could be like, well, that's not. You could. You always can with movies like this. But even with all those questions sort of lingering, it feels right. As you're watching it, it feels right. The appearance of the French, and their presence in the movie is important, and they play heavily into the plot. And then the way that the Comanche interact with each other, the way that then what happens when the predator comes, it really fits together in a very satisfying way for me. So,
well, fantastic, excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and get to our topic today. So today's topic, once again, were our favorite fan theories. Whatever you want to call it, fan theories, hot takes, fan fiction, right? So we're each going to pick two. We'll kind of rotate around. If we want to sort of just add to anything, we can. But here's my first favorite Star Trek fan theory, and that is the Borg are intentionally farming humanity. Okay, so this one's my favorite because this one makes a whole lot of sense, right? So the fan theory is the assumption that you have the Borg, who are this incredibly powerful and technologically advanced civilization who assimilate, right? And the assumption is that they can't invent technology themselves. They have to assimilate, right? So in order for them to progress as a people, they have to assimilate societies that have more sophisticated technology. That's the only way they can progress, right? So it would make sense that you would need civilizations where you could intentionally antagonize in order for them to create new technologies that you can assimilate. So the fan theory is basically, obviously we can point to the many examples in Star Trek films or Star Trek series where they only send one Borg ship when you could easily send hundreds of Borg ships. So obviously we could think about Worf 359. Worf 359, is that correct?
Wolf 359.
Wolf 359.
And you say Picard is your favorite.
Did I say? So I said Worf, right? But that was more of a misstep, right? Anyway, so Wolf 359. So they only send one ship when they could easily send thousands, hundreds of Borg ships. They do it again in Star Trek First Contact. They only send one ship, although you can make the argument, they had the plan to go back in time, but it would make far more sense rather than do something elaborate like going back in time, just send hundreds of Borg ships. You could easily overwhelm Starfleet and take over humanity. Now, however, if what the Borg is actually doing is understanding that humanity is really good at adapting and creating new technologies, what you would do is you would intentionally irritate humanity. You would irritate Starfleet so that they can create new technologies that you can assimilate. Therefore, you are becoming far more powerful of a species because you have this this sort of like farming society, right? That makes a whole lot of sense to me. So I think that's one of my favorite fan theories, is the Borg is intentionally not trying to completely assimilate Starfleet and humanity, but they're using them as a way of progressing their technology. There you go. That's one of my favorite fan theories. Thoughts?
I mean even here in our timeline, right? The quickest way to advance a society is not to invent technology, is to steal it. So it makes sense in that regard. Yeah. They would just prod the evolution along and then live off the spoils of it. I mean, they do have transwarp technology, right? They are significantly more advanced in a lot of key areas. So what is it that Starfleet would have that they would be after?
So I don't know, new shields. Like, so you're in order. So
I mean, they already have adaptive shield technology. Like, pretty much everything is more advanced that we know of.
If you know that humanity is incredibly quick at adapting and creating new technologies, what you're essentially doing is you have an experimental society where you can go, all right, so what happens if we do meet a species that can easily adapt to our weapons and fight back? Well, we need to be able to find ways to create new technologies. And what we do is we use humanity for that. And we're already more powerful than humanity, so we're not really truly threatened by them.
Yeah.
We're just using them as a way of sort of, experimenting with technologies.
Yeah. I mean, you could look at it as them trying to get at, why would they even bother assimilating humans at all, since they don't assimilate species that don't offer them anything right off the bat, because they don't assimilate the Kazon, who are terrible, and I understand why they don't. So they stated that, they've established that in canon, that they will just pass you by if they don't think you offer them anything. So there has to be something. It could just be, honestly, the territory the Federation has, because you would think about it as humanity, but it may not be humanity they're after. It could be the Vulcans. This reminds me, honestly, of exactly, because I talked about it the last 2 or 3 times I was on here, and when I did, I finished the show and wrote a thing for the site about it. In Babylon 5, which is a sort of a Star Trek adjacent show, the Shadows, that is what they do. That is their whole thing. They are one of the big villain of it for much of the show's run, and they create war amongst species to advance species, and then the ones that can't hack it are killed. And that's the whole point. They believe in strength and growth through conflict and chaos. And then there's a parallel species called the Vorlons who believe in it through order. And it's, in a way, kind of both of them, honestly, sort of seem Borgish, because the Borg are obviously very martial. They'll come and they'll kill you. But at the same time, they're extremely controlled, which is more of a Borg thing, more of a Vorlon thing, to carry that allegory further. So it almost does feel like that this is something that sits right next to the way that show resolves its plot, more or less. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're probably talking mostly about limitations of scripted series and how much effects they have, because you're gonna run into that with Star Trek constantly. You're gonna have to always sort of make excuses for why, like, Alexander just disappears from the Enterprise, and all the kids that show up on the Enterprise D just disappear after like one episode, because having kid actors in TV shows is a nightmare. And it slows things down, and you have to deal with their school stuff and the laws about it. So they usually don't keep them around, even if the plot of the episode they were just in indicates that they are going to do that. And there's always limitations on, the classic, in the old movie Stagecoach, somebody asked director John Ford, why didn't they just shoot the horses when they were trying to take the stagecoach at the end? And his response was, the movie would end. So they had them do the stupid thing and attack the stagecoach itself, because the people in there can fight back. There's your movie. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that goes on, but definitely Star Trek fans, like many fans, will bend over backwards trying to find ways to make it make sense in the universe. And this is, I think, a good example of that. Like, why don't the Borg just kill everybody right away?
All right. Well, very good. There's my fan theory. Jeremy, we're moving to you. What is one of your favorite Star Trek fan theories?
So this is something that, and I'm not familiar with most of the wider fan ideas. This is something that I just always assumed was meant to be the case, until I recently read a comic where it is decidedly not the case. But I'm still going to talk about it because I like the idea, and that was that Trelane was a Q, and so Trelane from the original series essentially has all the powers of the Q continuum,
but not the production value.
Well, it's all relative. It was the '60s.
All right, move out of the frame. Okay,
he has the fashion sense, though.
He does have the fashion sense. That's true.
And it was sort of Kirk's, Q that he battled with. I mean, he didn't come back and forth the way Q did in the Next Generation and the other series, but yeah, I always liked the idea that Trelane, or that Q, was based off of Trelane. But yeah, I recently read a comic where Q and some of the other sort of a reality, I guess, beings are in a like an atemporal war, and it's Q and Trelane and a handful of others, and like they bring in the prophets and whatnot. But yeah, so that smashed my idea, but I still like the thought of it.
All right, well, very good, excellent. We have a Q in the original series. All right, Acid, what's one of your favorite fan theories?
I mean, there's a couple. I mean, I had a couple of runner-ups, I guess. Well, one for sure. One runner-up was that Wesley Crusher was Picard's son. That was one that I found pretty interesting because, I mean, if you think about it, Picard was pretty wild in his younger days. I could see him, not being so nice to his best friend and his wife, and
he learned to take risks.
He learned to take risks.
Not a risk at all.
And and then of course, Beverly's never going to say anything. But actually came up. I don't think I've ever heard this one, but I kind of just thought of it. So it was the episode of Next Generation, where of course Data is Sherlock Holmes, and they go in, and Geordi, says, let's make an opponent that's, can beat Data, and of course it comes with Sherlock Holmes's nemesis. Just had the
Moriarty.
Name. Yes, Moriarty. Thank you. It was on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, and then the second episode where Moriarty shows up, they put him in this spiral loop of, is it a holodeck? Are they on the holodeck? Are they not on the holodeck? And they keep going around in this little circle, and they try to figure it out. Well, they figured out that the whole time they've been on this holodeck. Well, my theory would go, what if they actually just never left the holodeck and they're still on the holodeck right now, just chilling on the holodeck?
All right, well, fantastic.
Think about
two fan theories there offered. So Wesley Crusher was Picard's son all along. That little Picard, you little slut.
That's why he's so good, right?
All right, so let's move on.
I mean, because Picard married Beverly and then got divorced at the, that was one of the final episode of Star Trek Next Generation.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true.
Revealed, so.
All right, well,
continuing the romance.
All right, Will, what do you got? What's your favorite fan theory?
Well, I like those. I think the holodeck one, if you're a holodeck character, you can't end the program. So even Barclay saying at the end of Ship in a Bottle, computer in program, what if he was a holodeck character?
Doesn't what's the guy in Deep Space Nine? He ends the program one time, doesn't he?
Oh, Vic.
Yeah,
I think he does. Yeah, because it's funny because like they make a huge deal out of the Moriarty episode, and then the second one, and then also with the Doctor and the whole idea of what it means to be alive with the Doctor on Voyager, and then there's just this guy like in the last 2 seasons of Deep Space Nine that just sings like 50s lounge songs and also is like completely self-aware, and nobody is like spooked by that at all. And like the idea of this kind of emerging artificial intelligence was a huge plot point in like 8 or 9 different things in the franchise before. But whatever. We're accepting of these things now.
The weird thing is that Vic is a real person in the mirror universe.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense.
No, not at all. Not remotely. On the I guess on that side of things, a little bit. Speaking of the artificial intelligence, and honestly, kind of the general, because Jeremy was talking about Trelane and Q, and I think Gene Roddenberry loved his God entities, and there were so many of them all through. And I think Q was kind of the one that was like, this is the one he was trying to get the whole time. But there was like various versions of God. Like I think there's probably like 8 or 9 different Star Trek original series and movie plots that they fly off into space and meet God. And one of those is Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where V'Ger returns. And I think Shatner actually pushed this, that V'Ger is the beginning of the Borg.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some non-canon novels about it.
Yeah, in Shatner's books.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think the people who write his books actually are pretty good, the Stevenses. But obviously there's a bit of a stink when Shatner's involved in some things to some degree. But I don't necessarily want the Borg to be explained, because I do feel like you sort of lose some of the mystique when you tell us exactly how the Joker was created, or when like you start getting too into like why predators do what they do. Just have them be a thing that exists. And I think it's good for the Borg to have just sort of happened and have come into existence somehow, and not necessarily need to know why. But if you're straining for an explanation, I mean, there's obviously some overlap there with V'Ger. The motion picture is not, I don't think, a great movie. It looks great. It's slow and boring for sort of meddling reasons that got Roddenberry pushed out of the franchise to some degree. But it's one of those that still, like, you see it and you still have to kind of at least appreciate some aspects of it. And I do think the V'Ger concept is a good one. And I feel like it's sort of like with Trelane and Q, there's a lot of dry run versions of these characters that appear throughout the franchise, and sometimes even in other science fiction, that then they sort of tinker with and perfect over the long period until they get the thing that they wanted. And I think they did that with Q. I think they did it some with the artificial intelligence characters. And I think that the Borg, because the Borg already were kind of supposed to be those gross insect things from season 1 of the Next Generation, was the original idea for the Borg, but that was such a gross episode, and there was so much writer turmoil at that time that they abandoned it and then reimagined them as the cybernetic beings that they ended up being. So it's cool kind of seeing these rough drafts become a finished product in some cases. And I think the Borg are like 3 or 4 different rough drafts that they finally kind of coalesced into one thing in season 2 of the Next Generation.
All right, well, fantastic. We've each shared one of our favorite fan theories. What's funny is that there's actually a whole series of books that gives another origin story for the Borg, or an explanation for the Borg that has nothing to do with V'Ger. But yeah, Acid, what do you got?
I was going to say, before you go to your next one, Anthony, we actually have a fan theory from the chat here.
Do it. Go for it.
So the theory is that Professor X and Captain Picard are the same person. Captain Picard is a living fantasy of mutant and being a handicap man. And both Star Trek and X-Men both have a hologram room.
All right. Well, fantastic. Excellent. Speaking of that, have any of you seen or read, I can't remember if it's a book or a comic book, where it's an X-Men Star Trek crossover? Have you seen this?
Yeah, it's a comic.
Is it?
Where they go to a planet where the X-Men are, like this is a Star Trek ship that goes to a planet where the X-Men exist.
Yeah. But it's the original series, right?
It is original series, because there's a joke in it. Actually, I have the comic. There's a joke where someone says Dr. McCoy, and both Beast and Bones go, yeah, right, at the same time, right? So everything for that joke, right, is just like very good. Excellent. All kinds of great fan theories. I'll go ahead and get to my other one. This one may seem less significant, but I love it, and I wish it actually was the case. Okay. Nicholas Locarno is Tom Paris.
You stole it. You stole mine.
Is this yours?
Yes, I love that theory.
Okay,
yeah,
all right. So
yeah.
there's a reason why they're not the same character, right? There's plenty of reasons why they're not the same character. I think there's rumors that it had something to do with you would have to pay the original author to use the character, right, or something, and it would be too expensive to take the character from the Next Generation to Voyager. Although we've seen that in the past where characters. Yeah. So I don't. That doesn't really make a lot of. Miles O'Brien, Worf. I mean, there's plenty of characters that have transitioned from one series to the other. But all right, so the fan theory is if you're a Star Trek fan, you know that Tom Paris, the actor who played Tom Paris, who was the pilot in Voyager, also played a strikingly similar character in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where basically you have the character, something goes wrong. And because of his actions, another pilot dies, and he tries to cover it up. At the last minute, he admits to it, right, and he goes to jail. Well, in Star Trek Voyager, the same actor plays a character who also does something where where a colleague dies. It makes perfect sense that a fan theory would come into play where it's like, well, the Locarno was simply changing his name because he has a famous dad, that he didn't want to, live in his shadow, and he changed his name. And then when he went to jail, he just decided to, retake his actual name, right? I think it would actually have been so much cooler if Star Trek Voyager actually took Locarno and actually developed that character through the series. It would have been far more interesting. You already want to use the backstory of him, being a sort of a tragic character and as a redemption arc. But if you actually had a backstory where you could go and actually watch Star Trek: The Next Generation and go, all right, this is his backstory, and kind of continue that throughout Star Trek Voyager, I think that would have been far more satisfying of a series rather than just saying, yeah, he did something bad in the past, but now he's getting better. No, we know what he did, and we know how he is, progressing as a character. And you could also do like flashbacks. You could have him actually struggling with his decision and what it did. Maybe you put him where you have episodes where he's the leader of a mission, and he's continually harping back to thinking about what he did wrong, where someone died, right? It could have been a really great way of growing that character, giving him more of a complex backstory. But I like that. This is probably one of my favorites. Locarno is Tom Paris. All right. Nothing to add there? Fantastic.
I like it.
Okay.
I like it. It looks
very good. All right, so Jeremy, what's yours? What's your next fan theory?
So my other one is that Section 31 was behind the motivation to genetically modify Julian Bashir to create their perfect super sleeper agent.
Fantastic.
Pretty much.
Okay. All
right. So how would this benefit Section 31?
Well, so, all these intelligence agencies are playing the long game, right? They're looking, 50, 100 years out. So they know that at some point in the future, they're going to need someone who has the personality and the capability and the access that Bashir does. And they go and, whether knowingly or not, convince his parents to get him genetically modified so that he has the intelligence and the reflexes and whatnot as required by that role.
Now he doesn't join Section 31. So are you just saying that the plan failed? Is that what you're saying?
No, he does. He does join Section 31.
Well, he does one mission. He does one mission with them.
In the books, he does others. Yeah. So there are storylines of him working for Section 31.
All right. Well, it seems like everything worked out pretty well for Section 31 there then. Excellent.
Yeah, and I always wanted, I thought that'd be a really cool Star Trek show of just Section 31 stuff. But most of my ideas for Star Trek shows would never happen.
So do you think? Looks like Will is going to have to head out of here. That's totally fine. We understand. Jeremy, do you think that, Will, do you have time to share your next one real quick?
Yeah, maybe just do one last one, but you go ahead and finish your point.
All right. So just Jeremy, this may make you very angry to know that Star Trek Discovery mentions Section 31 several times. And not only does it mention it, that there are Starfleet officers that know that Section 31 exists.
Yeah. Well, so my third, fan hunch was going to be that everything after Voyager is just a fever dream and never happened. So.
Oh, very good. Well, excellent. That's how you solve that problem. Will, let's go ahead and I know you have to head out of here.
Yeah.
What's your next one?
Well, it's more of it's kind of a theory, but it's also just maybe a possible observation because it's been somewhat established in canon that the Federation aren't good guys. Because you sort of come into it with a very Starfleet heavy perspective, and why wouldn't you? All the main characters are Starfleet characters. It really isn't until sort of in the Next Generation that you started to get a sense that the other like empires and groups that exist in the galaxy have their own things that are kind of worthy, because a lot of the stuff with the Klingons that you get, especially in Star Trek 6, where so much changes with the Federation Starfleet Klingon relationship, in the real world that came after the beginnings of the Next Generation. That was a few years into the Next Generation running. The first time we see Kronos is in season 3 of the Next Generation, and then they used a lot of those elements when they expanded on the planet and all the Klingon planets that you see, or the Klingon moon that you see in the Undiscovered Country. The clearest example obviously is the Maquis storyline and Eddington's big FU speech to Cisco in season 4 of Deep Space Nine. And some people don't like the Eddington. I love the Eddington storyline. I kind of wish that we'd gotten more of him, especially when the Dominion War started and the Maquis would have been forced, literally at the point of a gun, to have to go back in with the Federation and just deal with their bad history. But they didn't do it that way, and they left a lot of Maquis stuff sort of sitting on the table, like Tom Riker and some more of Eddington, and the actor didn't work, but the first actor that you see who played by Bernie Casey in season 2 of Deep Space Nine, who defects to the Maquis and literally burns his uniform with his phaser, and that really explains why Cisco rants about the uniform so much in the later Maquis episodes, because that guy was his very good friend who had turned his back on Starfleet. And you see the Maquis as terrorists, and they are terrorists. They do terrorist things, but the Eddington speech says you're worse than the Borg. You assimilate people and they don't even know it, because it is a sort of way that maybe a lot of Western powers in the real world thought that they were doing, when in reality they were just coming and taking stuff. So there's a way to read it that way, and one of the reasons why I like Deep Space Nine so much is because it does open the floor up a little bit more to not just that idea, but also that the other entities that exist out there aren't necessarily just villains, that they all have the reasons for why they are the way they are, and they all have a place in the universe. And so even the Ferengi as comic characters still, there's a reason for them to be and a purpose that they serve. And the same with the Romulans, and the same with the Klingons. And then you get a more monstrous version of what some people might consider the Federation to be with the Dominion, and in the big war that breaks out there. So and Voyager even kind of brushes up against this a little bit by putting them out of Federation space and kind of giving you an idea of what the Federation might be in a situation like that, with some of the episodes where you see other Federation ships who've gone bad when they've been trapped out there and not kept to at least some version of Starfleet morals like Voyager mostly does. So there's some of this in the canon, but it's interesting I think to think of it even beyond that and sort of look at events that occur in the franchise through the lens that's not a Starfleet specific one.
Well, very good, excellent. So Starfleet, they're not the good guys. I will say this: I definitely love that Deep Space Nine. And Will, if you have to get out of here, I totally understand.
I would like to hear more of this, but I do have to bail. So thank you guys for having me. I'll see you guys soon, hopefully.
Well, fantastic. Excellent. Excellent. All right, so that's one of the things I did definitely enjoy about Deep Space Nine is it sort of tackles, it sort of highlights the areas where Starfleet may not be as great as we originally thought. Right? It's not exactly a utopia like Star Trek: The Next Generation, although Star Trek: The Next Generation also kind of dives into some darker elements as well. With Section 31 and everything, where Starfleet maybe are not exactly always the good guys in particular situations. I will say this, though. I feel like it's too much now, especially when it comes to shows like Picard and Discovery. I'm kind of over the Starfleet is actually the bad guy kind of a thing. Like I wish it would revert back to they're mostly the good guys. Like I feel like Star Trek Picard and these later series are they're continually going back to the well of, well, maybe Starfleet needs to change because they're actually bad. I don't know. It's just it sort of gets away from the original idea in the original series and Star Trek: The Next Generation, where it's like this is what we could be. This is what we can become. It's a positive way of looking at our future rather than every other science fiction that's out there is this is a dark future. Blade Runner, Snowpiercer. There's so many shows where we have not Doctor Who. Right? Doctor Who perhaps is another example of that. But I'm kind of getting over the whole, Starfleet are actually the kind of the bad guys. Situation.
I mean, it's just a reflection of society, of what people want to see. Because it's just a popular take these days for whatever reason.
I think there's a way you could do it without reverting to that well again. Like there's a way that you can sort of highlight some of the darker elements of humanity without it being Starfleet. There's a way that you could do that. I feel like it's too often reverting to that. We're always going to be evil. We're always going to be bad, which who knows? That's probably what we're human beings are probably always going to be horrible. Right. But it was always such.
I don't agree because I don't think human beings are horrible now. So
well, there you go. Well, fantastic. Well, excellent. I'm glad you have a positive way of looking at the world.
Tell that to the parents that have been cussing me out this week.
That's true. And we know Acid is one of those horrible people.
I'm a horrible person. I've told people where to go several times this week.
Any other fan theories there, Acid? Do you see
one that I did. There's a couple I did see just real quick. Lore secretly replaces Data. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Okay.
I haven't seen that one. And then another Borg one. So when the Borg was adapting to humanity, in the one where what was it?
Anyway. In one of the movies?
No, it was. I think it was Voyager. When they found the weak Borg and 7 of 9 took them on and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, okay. The children,
yes. And so I think the theory was, when I can't remember his name, Echem or something was going to be Echep, was going to be sent back to the Borg to destroy them. That they ended up adapting his humanity, and it made the Borg as a whole weaker. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
All right, well, there you go. Another interesting fan theory. I think we still have one more left, right? Acid, this is you. What's your final fan theory?
Those two, I guess.
Oh yeah, you already shared two.
The ones he just said.
The ones I just said.
Oh, I thought you were sharing fan theories from the comments. I thought people.
Oh no. These are just a couple that I've.
Oh, okay.
That I read. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I.
Not from the comments. No, these are just some that I read.
Right.
I don't think
I got very excited that we had all those comments. I was like, look at all these people contributing. And then
we do have a theory. We do have a couple of theories in chat as well. One is a theory: Anthony may be a sexy beast.
Oh, thank you
according to Mr. CJ here.
CJ, always good to hear from CJ. Thank you so much, CJ. You always help out my ego. I need that. I always need to be called a sexy beast from time to time. But yeah, excellent. But that was our topic for today. We talked about our favorite Star Trek fan theories. We dived into all different things. We talked about why we liked them, and we had a good time A good time doing it. Once again, you can always check out all our episodes on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts as well. But that is it for today. Have a good one, everybody. Goodbye.